So you might think, hey, who's this Jennifer person? What kind of experience does she have? And normally I don't spend a lot of time talking about myself, but I do believe that a lot of the things I've been through in life, when it comes to real estate, have really helped form who I am and the type of broker that I am and how I teach and the information that I have. And so thought I would take a little bit, explain, kind of my background and answer some questions people have asked me over the last couple of years. I was actually born in Jacksonville and lived here until my parents divorced. It was about two and a half, three. My mom moved me to the Tallahassee area. Dad continued to stay here. My family actually owned Carol's Meat Shop here in Jacksonville locally. My dad was running that and ended up coming to visit, obviously, when I was spending time with him and officially grew up in the Tallahassee area. And then when college happened, decided that I wanted to come back to Jacksonville, be closer to my dad, and just experience something different than Tallahassee. Even though I am an FSU fan, but don't worry, my husband's a Gator, and so I did decide to come back to Jacksonville for college and went into the investment finance degree. I thought it would be easy because I already actually had a Series 6 63 life health variable annuities license by the time I was like 20 years old. So thought that would be the easiest option for me and graduated from UNF in 3.5 years. I graduated December of 2006. And when I was actually finishing the last bit of UNF, I decided to take on a job at Pulte, and I was a greeter. So they had me out there on Fridays, Saturday, and Sundays, and I welcomed people that were walking into the sales offices and made sure they had, brochures, answered some questions, and they basically just kind of kept them entertained until a side agent was available. And remember, this was in 2005, 2006, and the market was crazy. The community that I was a greeter at was actually Wolf Creek on Beach Boulevard, back when Beach Boulevard was a 4-lane road. And I remember when they were building that road and there was construction barrels all the way down and you had to like drive between the construction barrels. It was crazy chaos. But man, how much has Beach Boulevard changed in most of Jacksonville? But greeter there, and then I was a greeter kind of at the different communities they had. And then when I graduated, like I said, December of '06, they said, hey, we really have liked you. I think you'd be good at sales. So they sent me to real estate school early '07, passed my class. I highly, highly recommend the Florida Real Estate Institute on Wells Road. I think they are one of the best places to get licensed in all of Florida. You can do it online and in person. But I really, really enjoy their class. I feel like their instructors are really good. So anyway, there's my plug for them. But they've been great. Went through that class and passed my test, and then they put me on the sales floor. The first community that I ever sold at was I actually split my time between Summerfield, which is right over there off of Gate Parkway, and then Midtown, which is the 3-story townhomes that are right behind. I think it's the St. Vincent's Hospital. It used to be St. Luke's, but they changed names. And I split time selling there, learned a ton. My first customer that I ever worked with made me cry, and it was an absolutely horrible experience. I remember calling my mom and saying, "Mom, I quit. I'm done." I mean, this is like a month into selling real estate. And she's like, "No, don't quit. Don't let." It was a guy that was just he did all of his negotiation after the contract was written. Let's just put it that way. And she's like, "Don't quit. You can do this." And I'm so glad that I didn't. But yeah, it, it was really close that real estate was not going to be it for me. So fast forward, continued to sell. The market turned, obviously. 2007, 2008. I mean, there were so many layoffs. At Pulte, we went through, I think it was like 13 rounds of layoffs that happened in Northeast Florida, and I made it through all of them. But they had to sell homes to keep their doors open, and I was one of the newest people making the least amount of money, and so I guess maybe that's why I got kept. But anyway, so was selling homes. I actually bought my first townhome in 2007, and at Summerfield, the community I worked at, which was a great experience. I got to sell to all my neighbors, which has its pros and cons. But it was nice just being able to own a home and go through that process. Um, fast forward even further, I was really wanting to become a division president one day. And so my boss said, look, you have to have sales and marketing experience to become the VP of sales and marketing, which then is like a next step to a division president. And so the opportunity presented itself for me to switch from sales over to marketing. At the time I was doing really good. I was working at Flagler Station, right off of Phillips, just north of Racetrack Road, selling the townhomes there. It was before they had added single family in that community. And I met my husband, Scott. This was all going on in 2009. And his family always did stuff on weekends. I worked every weekend. It was great because I had either Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday off. So nobody was at the pool, nobody was at the beach, nobody was out doing anything. So it was nice to have those days, but I missed so much of the things his family was doing. And so when the opportunity presented itself for me to become marketing coordinator, I took the jump. And the marketing manager at the time was going on maternity leave. They needed a hole filled for her. And so went into the marketing side of things. And at that time, I was working again for Pulte, who had owns Del Webb. So I was doing a lot of going back to like Stone Creek down in Ocala, working the Del Webb communities that were here, plus all the Pulte communities. And through all this time, this was when the builders were building a lot of townhomes. They were still building condos. I learned a ton about the difference between a condo and a condo conversion. Again, when you're selling new construction, you're selling against, ooh, you don't want to buy that house with somebody's dirty toenails that are stuck in the carpet. And, it has transformed my life because I have not bought a resale because I don't think I can, because I spent so many years selling new construction and selling against the nasty, dirty toenails that are in somebody's house. So it's definitely, like I said, changed who I am. And, so went into marketing coordinator, was working through all of that, and then I had the opportunity to purchase a home in Nocatee. And so, Scott and I went under contract, and, we were gonna build a house in Greenleaf Village, and the division president called me up, for the builder we were buying. We were buying a stand pack home at the time, and he said, "I want you to come work for me." And I was like, well, I don't know how much I'm gonna make. What am I gonna do? And so if you let me out of my contract, I'll switch and come work for you. So I made that switch, and they let us out of our contract, which I'm thankful for because wouldn't be where I am today if I'd still been there. And it was such an amazing experience. Jim Burkholz was the division president at the time, and he just really allowed me to be in rooms I never should have been in. When I made the switch, I switched to online sales counselor. So I was the one that was doing the marketing. So I was a marketing person. So I was putting all the homes in MLS. I was doing the sheets, the information sheets, all the flyers, the brochures, everything that came out to the consumer from the models. All that was stuff I was working on. And then I was also taking all the calls. So if you called into the office asking for an appointment at a community, I would take that information and get it to that particular site agent, help get the appointment set up. As Standard Pacific was growing, they actually hired a new online sales counselor. So I went more into more of the marketing. What was really cool about that is I got to deal with a multi-million-dollar budget for marketing. So I was involved in direct mail campaigns, ads with some of the newspapers, ads with some TV spots, again, radio. Just being involved in different things allowed me to see, marketing from a different perspective. There's not a ton of social media going on at this point with real estate. I mean, there was with general, but the builders really weren't there. So that really wasn't part of where my focus and energy was. And then we were growing. And so we were obviously building new communities. Jim, again, the division president, he let me sit in those rooms, and I got invited to fly out to Irvine, California, which is where Standard Pacific's headquarters was, and their main architects. And we developed, or they were designing some of the new floor plans we were bringing to Jacksonville. So I got to sit in the room while the architect is literally sketching on a table what the floor plan is going to look like and giving an opinion. Hey, what about if we did this? What if we did that? Again, should never have been there, but so thankful that I was, because I got to see a lot. And you might be thinking, okay, well, which floor plans are there? All the duplexes that are at Montevilla, Terra Costa, some of those single family homes in Terra Costa, a lot of the homes that are in Celestina on Racetrack Road. Those were some of the floor plans that we were designing with those architects during that time frame. So I had a big input, Artisan Lakes and Nocatee, and then some of the stuff in 20 Miles. So it was cool to be able to say, hey, I took part. I was the one that just had a little say here, a little say there. Something was tweaked because of it. So just fun to be able to say that. So as we're building, designing the floor plans, now you're like, okay, well, we got to name streets. So then I got tasked with naming streets, which is so incredibly hard because you got to find a street that doesn't exist anywhere else in the county, and then come up with something unique. So some of the communities that I just mentioned, I was responsible for naming a lot of those streets. I was not involved in designing of the amenity centers, but I was there for all the presentations and all of that. I got to meet with the designers that designed these $1 million models that we had and it was fun having them come in. They'd have presentation boards and they'd say, this is kind of our feel for the kitchen and our feel for living room and the bedrooms, and being able to say, okay, I like this, don't like that. And I have no design ability whatsoever. I couldn't stage a home if my life depended upon it, other than the fact that I can look at something and tell you I like it or I don't like it. So it was just nice to, again, have 2 cents put in on some of those things. And then getting to see the communities being developed literally from trees coming down, infrastructure coming in, the issues that you don't expect that happen with drainage or wetlands that you weren't anticipating, access to a main road and how's the traffic and do we need to have a traffic light, gate issues. I mean, all of that stuff I got to be a part of. And then the construction stage, obviously, when you're developing a community, you got to put the models in first. So Chuck Boland, I think he's like a VP of construction locally still in Jacksonville. Amazing guy. I give a lot of credit of my construction knowledge to him, but he let me be in meetings. I got to walk model homes at all the different stages of construction. And it's fun because when they've never built a floor plan before, it looks great on paper, but whenever you actually build it, you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't work. This floor plan, just the hallways don't match, or it's awkward, or you can see the actual toilet and somebody sitting on it from the living room. Not a good thing. But sometimes you don't notice that until you're actually walking a home. So got to be involved in that with construction, and then seeing it really go from the concept of a blank piece of paper to a drawing on a paper to then a plan that got submitted to then slab being poured, framing going up, walls going up, drywall cabinets, and then finishing off with the designers coming in and doing their touch. So it's really, really a different side of real estate that I like a lot of people don't get to see. And as you can see, I have a ton of passion for new construction. But at some point I had to make a move. So that's where my story transitions a little bit. Back in beginning of 2016, my VP of sales at the time, Harmony Munger, I also give her tons of credit because she would never answer me when I had a question. She made me come to her and she'd say, okay, if you have a question, I need you to come to me with 3 potential solutions. Even though my solutions not always right or worked, but it forced me to think out of the box. It really forced me to start learning for myself, coming up with solutions and bringing things to the table. But Harmony, just absolutely great at that. She also really helped me with sales and just talking, and again, huge impact in my life. So I definitely thank her. And she went on maternity leave. And when she went on maternity leave, I got the opportunity to be in, her position, the VP of sales and marketing. I didn't have the title, but I was doing all the things that she was doing while she was gone. And one thing that was really cool is we had an app at the time, and every single community had its own like drop down, and then every lot had a lot premium on it. It had like the house and stuff like that. So if you were a buyer walking into like Terra Costa into the sales office and you said, hey, I want to buy this home, but I want it for $10,000 off, or I'll give you this offer for it, or what, things like that. The site agent can't make those decisions. Sometimes they had a little bit of fluff where they didn't have to call management, but usually they would have to submit the offer to management. And so that's where it would come to me, when I was running this role, and I would put in, it's this floor plan, this, and then I'd see the margin. And so my division president had said, "Hey, if the margin at the end of the system was X, right, then I could go ahead and approve it. If it wasn't, then I would have to counter back to the site agent so that they can then counter to the buyer and so forth." So it was really cool to understand how margins worked and how builders kind of worked on it, because it's not just, hey, we got to make this much. It had to do with, had they hit their sales for the month already? Did they need more sales in that community? It was based off projections that the builder had sent out to corporate, because you remember it's a publicly traded company. So then it's got all the investment side of things you got to pay attention to. And those numbers were constantly changing. So every community was a little bit different, and it was all in that little app. So I got all of that experience when she was on maternity leave. And I went from loving my job and cannot wait to find a VP position and then move up to a DP one day, to really not being happy. When Harmony came back from maternity leave, it was different, because I had now worked in her role for a couple of months, and now going back to where I was, I don't think I handled it super well. Learning experience for me, but I also think that God had a different plan for my life. And if I was so happy where I was, I never was gonna leave, and so I feel like he almost made me unhappy so that it forced me to relook at everything and say, "Hey, I gotta make a change." So this is all happening February of 2016. And I reached out to a couple of people that I know in the resale world, one being a guy named Chris Hone. And he's who I had sell my townhome when I sold it. He's who sold like my husband's grandfather's house and aunts, because new construction, you can't sell and you resale just what the builder has. So he was kind of who I had gone to. And I just met up with him, actually at Moe's off of Bartram, and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about making a switch into general real estate. What do you think?" And he's like, "Yeah, it sounds good. You really should do it." And I said, "Have you ever thought about having a business partner?" And he said, "Well, actually, yes," but he hadn't found anybody at the time that had his work ethic. And so had never partnered with anybody. I said, "Well, if I make the switch, would you want to partner with me?" And he was like, "Yes, absolutely." So a week later, him and his wife, my husband and I all sat down and we made this whole plan for me to go into general, and Chris and I would partner. Um, Again, remember, this is all in February. So I gave notice in March, and or the very end of March, and by tax day, I was gone in April, from the builder. And but hung my license where Chris had his license hung. Small brokerage, I think they had like 12 agents. And, Chris and I started. I remember at the very beginning, I'm like, "I have so much free time. What am I supposed to do?" I was cleaning baseboards behind my toilet. I had so much time. I would make the phone calls I need to make in the morning, and then my house has never been so cleaned by me. My husband, on the other hand, OCD, and he keeps things clean, but it had never been so clean by me ever. And at this time, I have two children. So both, I think they were both in pre-K, so both under 5 years old, I think. And, I'm like, what have I done? I left a six-figure job to go 100% commission, and I am cleaning my baseboards behind my toilet. So fast forward, things are getting a little bit busier. Chris and I decided we wanted to actually have our own brokerage. And so he was sitting in for the broker's class that summer, like in July. And the week before he started the class, we found out I can't be ownership in our brokerage if I'm also not a broker. So I signed up for the brokerage class, went through it with him, ended up taking the class in late July, early August, passing the test, and then we went to open up our brokerage. At the time, we actually named it Addison Taylor Real Estate, because Chris's oldest daughter, Addison, and mine is Taylor. And so we went to DBPR, set it up, got everything ready to go, had a logo. And then somebody goes, "Hey, Jennifer, do you know there's Addison Taylor Commercial, and it's in Jacksonville and it's kind of big?" And I was like, "Ooh, I don't want to infringe on names." And I just didn't really want to go there. And so we made a very quick pivot, and we're like, "Okay, what name were we going to pick?" We really wanted to honor God with the business. And so we're like flipping through the Bible, and, every name you can think of that might be, Kingdom Real Estate, Kingdom Realty, all these different names out there. You couldn't find them. There was no website address that was like .com that was free, because you gotta think the entire world cannot have that website address. Otherwise, you're gonna have to have some random end user, and back then, if you didn't have a .com website, you were just not cool. Now people have gone into a whole bunch of other things, but we, um we had met with somebody that actually had CrossView Mortgage, and he said, "Well, hey, there's not a CrossView Realty, so what about using that name?" Looked it up. It wasn't out there anywhere. We did see there was a CrossView Church that was local in Jacksonville, but outside of that, the website was free, the name was free, and it was like, okay, maybe this is it. We prayed about it, and that's how we ended up at CrossView Realty. At the time, I thought, "Hey, smart idea." Pulte had Pulte Mortgage. It made Pulte look bigger. If we are CrossView Realty, they're CrossView Mortgage. It makes us potentially look bigger, but we are two completely different entities. There's no ownership or anything between the two. But that's where our name came from. So Chris and I are working, getting, deals done, staying busy, reinvesting things back into the business. Things are going well. We're getting slammed. Became a Dave Ramsey ELP at the time, and got a lot of business through that. Probably the absolute best lead source I ever had. It just made sense. I used to teach FPU at church. I do believe in buy term, invest the difference. I do believe in being debt free. So it just aligned with me, and that means those customers that also felt the same way about Dave, we just talked, we jived. It was easy. It was easy business, and I think I did 13 or 14 deep. So a lead came in from Dave, and they referred me to somebody else, and that person referred me to somebody else. But I calculated it was like 13 or 14 off of, one lead source. And so really started learning how to work back end leads, and then getting the referrals, getting the repeat business, and, growing from there. So one of our home inspectors is like, "Hey, I have somebody that's an agent. She's really struggling. You guys seem to be doing really good. And so would you hire her on as an agent underneath you?" And we're like, "Yeah, because we want to grow a brokerage. We just didn't really know how to start, and we didn't know when to start." So brought her on, made a lot of mistakes, tons of mistakes there, and learned a lot. And, I actually came across a Facebook post of hers, or LinkedIn, yesterday. She's doing really good. She's now switched into commercial. So, I think it's been a great experience for her in the long run. But those first ones, they're difficult, because you don't realize how much of a pain it is to stop what you're doing and train somebody else. But Chris was so good at that. He was so good at loving on the agents, because we just got another one and then got another one, and mainly people we knew, family members, kids, or somebody, a customer of ours, their cousin or somebody was an agent. That's how we kind of started growing at the beginning. And, he did a lot of the training, and I went out and sold. So, um, eventually Scott left his job at Fidelity Investments, came over and started doing some selling with us. He sucks at selling real estate. Okay. And it's not that he's really bad at selling real estate, it's the fact that he had the worst luck ever. And it probably, again, was a God thing, because I used to tell everybody, real estate's so easy. Just do what I do. You're going to see the same experience and results that I saw. And Scott did that, and he saw the complete opposite results that I had. Um, every deal he had, it was like, if something could go wrong, it went wrong. And it wasn't just little things that went wrong. It's like Chris and I look at each other and we're like, we've never experienced this before. So we decided he should not sell. He still has his license, and, has it, so he's there and can help, but he does not sell. It turned out to be a good thing, because that summer, my son decided to stick his hand under a treadmill, and we lived a week in Wolfson's and skin graft and 3 surgeries later that summer. Somebody had to be home with him, so all the timing works out. Again, I do believe everything happens for a reason. And so he started kind of more so doing different things with the business. A little bit later, Chris's wife, Lisa, joined CrossView and left her career and started doing kind of our business management stuff and calling leads, recruiting, things like that. And, you know, having 4 heads in a business talking about what decisions we're going to make, what systems we're going to use, where we're going to spend money was not the best idea. I think partnerships do work, but not all of them. And the best advice I can tell anybody if you're thinking about a partnership is you have to figure out how to break up when the partnership starts. So if you're thinking about a partnership, you should be doing a buy sell agreement when things are all sunshine and rainbows. Because when you're happy with each other, when you're building this partnership together, then whenever you're thinking about if things went south or somebody wanted to get out, how do we get out? Then you're thinking about what's best for me and this other person, and they're doing the same thing. And you need to make a buy sell agreement at that time. That's the best advice I can give you. Make sure it's documented and you have a plan and who gets paid what and how it's going to work, but you need to do that. But Chris and I did great. 2 heads, 4 heads, not so much. And that brings us to the end of 2019. And Chris and Lisa sat down with Scott and I, and they said, "You know what? I think we're going to move to Utah. We kind of want to make a change." And so we're like, "All right, we'll buy you out." And again, we had a buy sell agreement, so we already had a plan in place. It wasn't foolproof, but we had something that worked. And by the end of 2019, we had figured out what that was going to look like. And then actually, Scott and I were on a trip to Israel, and we were in the Dead Sea on New Year's night going in from 2019 to 2020, and our buyout officially took effect while we were gone. So it was really nice coming back from there and being sole owner of CrossView. Then Chris stayed on. He still had his license here because they didn't move until that following summer. So Chris and I have a great relationship. He is now in Utah and still talk to him here and there. He sends referrals our way. So again, it was a great breakup because we planned ahead. So again, buy sell agreement. And come back to Jacksonville, and it's 2020. I paid him out a lot for the agreement. Like we just went ahead and paid him some money, and there were some other stipulations. But what happened 3 months later? COVID. And in the midst of COVID, I'm moving houses. We're a week from getting our CO on our new house, and everything shuts down. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna be able to move into my new house because everything shut down. Luckily, construction and the real estate world was only out in Florida for like a week, and maybe it was 2 weeks. And then besides that, everything went back to going. So many agents stopped working that year. They for a couple reasons. Some people were scared, and other people, their kids were all home, and so somebody had to stay home with the kids and do homeschool. And so I think a lot of people just couldn't handle both. But what that did is it allowed a lot of people that were out there were coming in and saying, "I want to buy." I mean, house prices hadn't started skyrocketing yet. They did towards the end of the year, really more 21. But that year, 2020, I think I sold like 23 million in real estate myself, plus what my team did. And so that was my actual best year, considering everything that was going on. And I never made a phone call to any outside lead source during that time frame. That was fully my customers that came back and said, "Hey, I want to move," or "Hey, my cousin wants to move." Like there was no getting leads from anywhere else. That all came from Sphere that year, which goes to show I do know how to work Sphere. So moving forward into that, things that happened since 2020. Most of the agents that I had on the brokerage before I bought Chris out aren't still here. Most of them have moved to another state because we had a lot of military that relocated. And then we also have had people that just got out of the industry. It just wasn't for them. And so we are very few of our agents back then we have today. I rebranded our logo. I moved our office. I changed every single system that we have. All of that happened between 2020 and where we are. I think it did it in a 3-year time span, 2020 to 2023. So a lot of changes going on, and we just have kind of been growing again. Went to a Dave Ramsey conference and was on his actual back porch with him, talking to him. And I was like, you know what? We have a name that honors God or talks about God, CrossView, but it's not anywhere else. We don't have a Jesus fish or a cross in our logo because I don't want to turn people away. But I'm also really scared of what people are going to say, right? If you say that you're a Christian person and you're running your business with that way, then how are people going to react? Are we going to get bad reviews because of it? Are we going to get people that are not going to like us, tell things that aren't true? Also the other thing is if you're going to put it out there, then you need to actually be doing that, right? Like I really believe that, some people put their beliefs out there, but then they act one way at church and they act in a completely different way when they're outside of church. And that's not giving a good name to anybody, right? And so if you're going to start saying, hey, as a business, the business is not Christian. A company cannot have a belief, right? But I make business decisions off of my core belief. And so if I'm going to do that, I need to make sure that I'm living that lifestyle. And Dave Ramsey really encouraged me to put it in our mission statement to be more bold. And so I will forever be grateful for him and that conversation on his back porch one day, and just the guidance he gave, because I still struggle with it. I don't feel like it's out there as much as it could be, but I really do give him that credit for helping me get a little bit more bolder in my faith. So after coming back from the Dave conference, making some changes with, putting our beliefs a little bit more out there, that's really, I think, where CrossView started to grow to where it is today. The culture started changing a little bit. The agents that we were bringing on were changing the environment. If you're watching any of the stuff that we put out, the shorts that are put out from our team, you'll see that some of our agents they've gotten out of debt being here. One person was on food stamps. I had no clue until I saw that video. And, it was just absolutely amazing seeing that transformation. People have been on the, brink of divorce that have come here, and they've been able to rekindle their relationship and keep moving forward. We've experienced, deaths in families, we've experienced accidents, all kinds of things that you can think of, and just to see the team really being here together. The agents will go show each other's homes without asking for something in return. They go to lunch together. They share ideas. They brainstorm together. They do drop-offs together. They'll do open houses together. Like one agent the other day, we had a new agent that got a really high lead, and he didn't feel super comfortable. And the agent's like, "I'll go with you." Wasn't trying to take the business, wasn't doing anything, just wanted to be there in case the new agent was nervous and couldn't answer a question, he'd be able to answer. And, a lot of people talk about their culture, and I don't think anybody should hear it from me. I think you need to hear it from the people that are here. But seeing what they're saying about the brokerage, because when I started being more honest about my beliefs and my faith and being able to say, hey, if you come here, I just wanna let you know that you're gonna listen. I mean, our music that plays in the hallways is, Christian music. We don't drink at, Christmas parties and office parties. Like, there are agents here that do drink, don't get me wrong. I used to drink a lot, now going on almost 3 years of no alcohol, and I was drinking a bottle of wine a night. So I do not have any judgment on people from that perspective. It was a decision I needed to make. But I, as a company, am not going to pay to have alcohol at an event. And so the agents know that. And so if they want to bring in an alcohol, they can, but I'm not paying for it. We have a prayer and praise board where you can put praise reports and prayer requests up there, not only for yourself, customers, anybody else you run across. We do have a Bible study on Wednesdays at 11 o'clock that, anybody is welcome to attend. Topics change every week so that they don't, go from, so if you miss one, basically you don't feel like you're behind. And, if an agent's struggling with something, I'm going to say, hey, can I pray for you? What can I do? Like, so I think being more upfront with that has helped agents that want to be in that environment decide to be here. And other agents have decided that CrossView is not for them. And that's okay. There's some phenomenal brokerages in Jacksonville. And, this is just how we're a little bit different. And so in bringing all of that out, I think it's really created that environment and culture that helps us to stand out. We're not huge, and I don't want to be huge, but I want to be providing the level of service that the agents need in those tools. So we do have video here. We have marketing person that's doing our social media. We have a transaction coordinator. I have somebody that runs our Zillow Flex team. We have mentors, we have programs, and, we're trying to always continue to innovate and push. I've gone down a really big AI trail over the last couple of months. So we got a lot of AI stuff that we give out to the team to helping them design things, create things, just to be outside the box, right? So my goal is to continue to learn and to grow. I'm still taking classes. So how can I get better when contracts change? How do I provide resources? I'm not a checked out owner at all. I am like, okay, what do we got to learn next? Where's the market going? It's a buyer's market. Okay, how do we work with buyers? How do we get the most out of this? Now it's a seller's market. All right, what do we got to do on the seller side? So constantly trying to just get better and be the best that I can. A few things that I didn't really talk about is, Hobby Lobby's owner uh, put out a book, and it's called Leadership Not by the Book or something. I could be wrong. I know I'm wrong. I'm butchering it. I'm so sorry. But it really impacted me because he said, he's not the owner of Hobby Lobby. He's a steward of Hobby Lobby. And God gave him the talents and gifts that he gave him to run that. But at the end of the day, it's not his. Yes, he can sell it and he can make money, but he's really there because God has him there to do the things that he has planned for him. And I really kind of took that to heart. And so you'll see on my signature and stuff that it says broker steward, because I don't feel like I'm the owner of CrossView. I want it to last past me, right? My kids right now have no desire to be a part of real estate or this business, and I'm totally fine with that. But I didn't name it the Hendry, Realty or something like that because I didn't want it to end with me. I wanted it to go past what I can do with it because the next person that comes in might take it, across the state of Florida, might take it national. I don't know, but I wanted to leave that open and and I just feel like I'm here for this time to steward the business the best that I can and then, pass it on when the time comes. So, again, big part of where my heart is from that perspective. Other things that you probably wouldn't know, CrossView Property Management was created in 2018. And the story that I like to tell everybody is there's actually two pieces to it. The first one is a customer of mine was north side of town, living up in Victoria Lakes, being moved to Japan for the military for a couple of years. Didn't want to sell his home, so he's like, "Hey, I need a property manager, and who do you recommend?" Did research, couldn't find anybody that I liked enough to say, "Oh my gosh, this company is awesome." And the famous statement that was said was, "Well, can you do it?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" Okay. Such a horrible statement, but I can't take it back now. And just because of that, then, property management was born and managed his property. Actually, my old VP, Harmony, managed two of her properties when she moved back up north. And then it just kind of started growing. Ended up with 10 properties. And then the second big piece of the story is that one day a customer wanted to go see like a million plus house. And then this person had a water pipe break or something big was going on in the property management. So, property management, I make nothing, but it's the right thing to do because the house is going to flood and cause a lot of damage. Or go show $1 million house over here and make thousands of dollars. And I didn't like being put in that position. I felt like it was for somebody that's always trying to do the right thing and me wanting to go show the $1 million house. I was like, this is horrible. This is not actually helping my customers do what's right and best for them. And so that's when I decided CrossView Property Management needed to be its own. And so we pulled it out from underneath the Realty umbrella, made it its own business and hired somebody. And so now I am very strict on the fact that you cannot be an agent and sell and do property management. You do one or the other. But I also feel that personality types are very different. Salespeople tend to be more um, fun and relationship driven, and they want to go see different houses, and it's just a different way of life, of like how you communicate. And then property managers tend to be more task oriented, very much so. Okay, I've got an AC broken over here. I've got, something I got to deal with here, a move out over here, pictures over here. They're just more of an admin type of a personality. And so I think that when you as an agent are sitting out there thinking, what do I like? Which direction do you typically fall? Because property managers usually aren't great at selling, and salespeople usually are not great at property management. So again, separated it, made it really easy. And property management's doing great today. It functions out of our same building that we're in. And we have, as of the recording of this, about 123 properties that we manage. And then we've extended into a home watch category and some other things that we're doing on that side. So that's kind of cool. And then also in 2020, we opened CrossView Referral Realty, mainly because Chris, my old business partner, needed a place to put his license, and also thought, hey, we've got a lot of agents that do move to other states for military relocation, and they're not wanting to pay NEFAR dues and MLS dues, but yet they still worked hard for their license. And who's to say they might not come back to Florida one day? So they can move their license to CrossView Referral Realty. It's a one-time $60 fee to move your license, and then your license stays active. You can't sell real estate. You're not a member of a board. You still have to do continuing education and keep up with all your DBPR stuff, but it gives somebody an opportunity to refer. And, with so many people out there, they got their license during COVID, and so many people haven't done anything with it. It's a great place that you can, hang a license and still make that side income. The example that I usually will give has to do with, like, you're the janitor and you're sitting there cleaning out the stalls at an office or a school, and you're talking to the other janitor, and they're like, "Hey, I want to buy a house." Well, if you're sitting there saying, "Well, I can help you buy a house," they're going to look at you like, "What are you talking about? You're a janitor like me. I get you for real estate license, but what can you know? I see you here every day. When do you have time for real estate?" But as that janitor, if you said, "You know what? Hey, I have somebody that is an amazing agent that I would love to connect you with and help you, purchase your home. Are you interested in that?" They're more likely to say yes. Then the janitor who has a license with a referral company just fills out a form, connects them with an agent that actually does real estate full time, is helping them with the purchase. They purchase, and a referral fee goes to the janitor who now made side income. And, by just being out there and talking about it, you're not saying, "Hey, use me." You're just saying, "Hey, I know somebody." You could be getting out of debt because of that extra money that you make. That could be your vacation money. That could be different fun things that you can do that don't interrupt or impede what your actual job is that's bringing in and putting that food on the table. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell. I know there's a lot more to it, but hopefully you learned a little bit more about me and some of my background. And just know that I'm an open book. There's not a question that you'll ask me that I'm going to be offended by. There's some things I probably won't share, but at the same time, I'm just here to, treat everybody the way that I'd want to be treated. I feel like if I can't be open and honest with who I am, then how are you going to be? And how can I really help an agent be the best they can be if I don't know what's going on? So I'm here, and, love the opportunity to get to meet you. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.